Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today with my guest, Kate Hamilton. Kate is an online health and fitness coach, and she was actually originally in my mastermind, my group mentorship in 2022, and has transitioned from primary school teacher to a massively successful online coach and fitness influencer over the past 2.5 years. She works primarily with women looking to educate and empower themselves through health, fitness, and connection with self. I'm looking forward to talking all things transitioning from jobs, nutrition and weight loss myths, and balancing family, work, and fitness. Kate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a real full circle moment, isn't it?
It really is, Kate. I remember back in 2022 when we were doing the mastermind, the group mastermind, and we had such a similar backstory because you were in teaching, you liked it, but it was kind of Groundhog Day. It was the same job, same feeling. Friday, it was the weekend. Sunday, you knew you were going back to work on Monday, and the dream was to move out into health and fitness. Talk to us a little bit about that transition. Bring us back to kind of 2021 coming into 2022, because there's a lot of people listening who are either teachers or working a job that they don't hate, but they don't love. It's not their passion to what you're doing now, where you're helping hundreds of thousands of people between the content online and programs and coaching, etc. Talk to us a little bit about that to paint the backstory, and we'll go from there.
It's funny, like it was actually very much step-by-step process. Like I didn't see myself in 2021 sitting here today, or, you know, to have the coaching business that I have now, or, you know, to be talking online about all these different topics. It very much, I actually got into coaching in general by accident originally. So I was a teacher. I was a teacher for 15 years, and sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here now. I'm getting used to hearing myself through the headphones.
For those listening, this is Kate's first time having headphones in the studio. We're recording this in Primal Studios in Dublin, so the full video is on YouTube as well. But it's very disorientating when you have headphones, hearing your voice back as you're speaking. So Kate, feel free to take them off.
So
I quite like
funny.
it. It zooms you in, but feel free to take them off.
No, I'm going to get used to this. Absolutely. But so I was a teacher for 15 years, and I never hated teaching, but I had very much just gotten like that into that Groundhog Day. And, you know, I had my kids quite young, and being a teacher was really handy and like hours wise for raising a family. And then what happened was I got involved in an initiative where this guy from the local CrossFit gym came in, and he wanted to train some teachers up to the CrossFit Kids program so that we could implement it in the PE curriculum. So I got to do the CrossFit Kids course, and that's how I initially got into coaching. And we were able to set up this little after-school club, myself and the other teachers that got involved in this. And I really enjoyed coaching, and I loved the excitement of it and the programming and, you know, everything. And then I was like, do you know what would make this so much better? If I could coach adults who actually want to be here. Mm-hmm. So that kind of led to me just testing out a bit of coaching with my friends in the CrossFit gym, because I was training in this gym then at that time, and I loved it. And then what happened was COVID hit. So the gyms obviously closed, and I decided now was the time to start qualifying myself. So because if we remember, like COVID hit March 2020, and as teachers we thought, this is going to pass over. We'll be back. The Easter holidays were coming. I think it was 2 weeks to the Easter holidays. And it was like, we'll be back. So we didn't have to do a whole lot for those couple of weeks up to the Easter holidays. We were just giving the kids a little bit of work. So I had all this time to really think. And I signed up to the precision nutrition course. I started doing that. I absolutely ploughed through that course in the space of a few months. I signed up then to my personal training course, did the online parts while I could. Once the world opened up a little bit, got my in-person sessions done. And then I during the second lockdown, then I started to build my online course, which very much was inspired from the precision nutrition course that I did, because I really learned how to be a coach with that. And I built this online course not knowing what an online coach was, because this is, late 2020, I suppose. The second lockdown, wasn't it? It was kind of December 2020. I didn't know. It was before TikTok. It was before Reels. It was before. So there was a few online coaches, but I didn't really. I had no intention to be an online coach.
It wasn't in your space either. When you're working full time as a primary school teacher or working full time as a job, I moved online in 2016, but you don't notice that there's coaches and online programs and these things until you're in the space. It's the reticular activation system, or the law of attraction, some people call it, but the brain's tuning focus, where you're like, oh, now I might set up an online program. I'm seeing that there's online coaching here. I might set this up. But if you're not in that space, you don't even see it. So again, that's a mirrored story from a lot of people I've heard that moved online during that period of time, where they start to think, oh, there's other options here. So talk us through the end of 2020. You started the online program. The schools hadn't opened up fully at this point, and you went in to take a career break, and then that extended. So talk us through, fast forward a little bit into that, because I think for people listening, they transition initially because of COVID. We're very unlikely to experience that again in our lifetime. Fingers crossed, touch wood, It doesn't happen. But you started to move online and work with people as the world reopened. We started the mastermind in 2022. So the world was kind of coming back to normal in some shape and form. Talk to us about that and trying to balance that, or how you made the decision that it's time to go all in on this. I remember having a conversation with you in the mastermind. You're like, I just don't want to go back teaching.
It was my biggest fear.
Yeah.
It was my biggest fear. And it's funny, like you ask me these things, and to this day, we are now in 2025, and it is still a little bit of a blur, the order of things. So I suppose, we think the world started opening up again to 2021, wasn't it? Really, it was. And at that stage, I knew when I went back in September 2020, I knew I wanted to job share the following year. Now, that's the lovely benefit of being a teacher, that you get, you have these different options where you can take job share, where you're basically in school half of the time and you share that job with another teacher. So, which was lovely. And the way it works with tax as well, you get 2/3 your salary. So it was a lovely way to be able to kind of dip my foot into it. But it was very much to coach people in person initially, and to have my online kind of program as a side to help people with their nutrition and lifestyle. I didn't realize that there could be a whole career out of online at that time. But yeah, so basically, by the December of 2020, I had arranged with another teacher, we were going to job share. We brought it to the principal, so I knew that, and I got a job in a local gym teaching classes, so a small group personal training. And I was training people in person, which then led to me moving on to another gym where I could do my own personal training with them. And at this point then I was working with you, Brian, and I remember you saying that, if you need to have a job on the side to be able to grow your online business, make sure it's not taking too much energy from you.
And mental real estate, where you have to think too much about it.
Yeah. So I went into a career break then the following year, and which was a really big step for me, because it was taking away that safety net of being a teacher. Even though the safety net was still there, I could still go back, but it was taking away a huge chunk of my salary. I had built my own coaching business enough that there was enough there to keep going. But I also needed a safety net of the gym as well. So I worked in a different gym, a different local gym, but it was more just working at the desk and, cleaning off machines and teaching a few classes here and there. And I loved it there. Loved it. I learned so much. I used to love going in to clean the showers and listen to a podcast and learn about business while I was working there. But I loved the people there. I loved the crack. It was brilliant. And I remember having a conversation with my sister kind of midway through my second year career break, and being like, oh, I'm thinking of leaving teaching. I think I'm going to take away that safety net. And, I don't know, I think it's a bit stupid. And, I'd be hearing all these narratives from everyone, you can't give up a good pensionable job. People, I think, genuinely thought I was having a midlife crisis. But my sister was like, Kate, what's the worst thing that happens? It all falls apart and you end up back in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, Maeve, that would be the worst thing that would happen if I ended up back in the classroom. And she was like, well, there's your answer. Mm. Why would you stay in teaching if that's the worst thing that could happen?
Can I ask a question on that? Because obviously we've had such similar backstories. The lack of support, not from everybody. I had some great support when I was making the transition, but from a lot of family members, friends, leaving a safe and secure job. You're silly, you're stupid, what are you doing? But that great advice from what's the worst case scenario, you end up back in the position you're in now. And that tends to be, and it's different. You have, husband, 3 kids, but you still have this thing that's going to support you as a safety net in the background, even if all went to hell in a handbasket in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, etc. What's something that you wish you knew starting, or advice to someone in a similar position? Because there's people listening, and we're going to talk about weight loss. We're going to talk about nutrition, all the things that you cover as your core concepts that have allowed you to explode on social media. But knowing what you know now, there's someone listening, and this is for the 1, 2, 3, 10, 100,000 people who are in that position going, I'd love to make that jump. I'd love to leave my quote unquote safe and secure job or the thing that I studied in college or university, but I just either don't know how or I'm afraid to. What's something you would say to them based on your experience to date?
That everything you want is on the other side of fear. And I think something that I've learned about myself is that I'm a hell of a lot stronger than I thought. I know that like fear is my default. I am quite an anxious person, and it will always, that initial reaction to anything out of my comfort zone will always be fear. But I've learned that I'm capable of a lot more than what my fear would lead me to believe. And I think we all are. And I think I learned that from fitness as well.
Let's pull on that thread a little bit, because your story, similar to mine, where we were teachers as our background, we had two splits here. I was always into fitness. I was always into the gym. And my quote unquote narrative, I'm using inverted commas here, was if I do something I would love and my passion, and I do it as a job, it won't be a passion anymore. That was a very self-limiting narrative for me. You got in great shape, and that fitness gave you the confidence to go and start your own business. Talk to us a little bit about where the fitness came and empowered you, because I think when we talk about weight loss, nutrition, misconceptions, you do a lot of work on empowerment, particularly for women. But for anyone that's listening, fitness was an empowerment to you that you ended up leaving your job. You've got 3 coaches working for you now. You've got a social media that's growing. You've got a podcast. You're serving loads of people because of what fitness gave you initially. Talk to us a little bit about getting in shape the first time and how that tied into building some of that confidence.
I was always very much an anxious child, lacked confidence, was not into team sports. And the reason why I wasn't into team sports was to do with fear and anxiety. I was afraid of letting other kids down. I was afraid, I genuinely believed, and all the way up to my 20s, up till probably the age of 30, that I wasn't as strong as other people, that I wasn't as good as other people. And, it was like, I still, I always believed that I was intelligent and that I could achieve academically. And, it's probably the emphasis that, my family put on that for me. But when it came to fitness, it always felt like this thing that was out of reach. And I looked at people who were in shape or who were sporty and looked upon them like they were better than me in a way. And it was kind of just something that always felt a little bit out of reach. So when I started getting into fitness, I actually did the Kayla Itzeness, the Australian fitness trainer, Kayla Itzeness. I did her BBG program. And at this stage, it was like PDFs, like just programs of home workouts. And I did these home workouts, and I just started getting into fitness, and everyone kind of was like, oh, look at Kate getting into fitness. This is funny. And I kind of used to laugh it off a little bit because I very much, used to just be drinking every weekend and, and didn't lead a particularly healthy lifestyle. So what this brought for me was a little bit of time for me, and just realizing how much better I felt when I moved my body was huge. And then when it got to the stage when I moved it into going to the gym, and I joined a CrossFit gym, and it was the first time I think that I did something that wasn't about how I looked. And it became very much about what my body could do, which was huge for me. And, you go, anyone who doesn't know, if you walk into a CrossFit gym, there's no mirrors. There's no one there on the Stairmaster or, doing bicep curls or anything like that. You don't see anything like that. It's just people throwing barbells around the place. And it was amazing. You leave your ego at the door. I was looking at these women that were so strong, and I'd never seen anything like this before. And I was like, wow. And I just threw myself into it. And then I realized, oh, I can deadlift more than I thought I could. Oh, I can actually hang from a bar. I can, these things that my body, and I worked so hard then to get better at things. And it really built my confidence, even my fitness levels, to someone who was always afraid to run, someone who had experienced panic attacks in the past, that, going out for a walk would often trigger a panic attack, to be able to run, these, just being like, wow, look what my body can do. This is amazing. And this led to, what else can I do? It lit this fire inside me that I was like, oh, everything I believe about myself isn't necessarily true.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because everyone has different versions of the story where something happens, like a tipping point, where they start to question these old belief systems of, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm not smart enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not fit enough, etc. And then a book, a course, a gym, a coach, a program, something makes you question that belief. And it sounds like CrossFit was that introduction for you, that performance element of what can my body do versus how does my body look. With your coaching now, and I know you do, because literally one of your taglines is educate and empower people through health and fitness and connection with self. That's literally how you promote yourself as a coach, people that work with your team, etc. How important is that feeling? Or let me rephrase the question, because I think you're in a very good position to answer this based on your life experience. How important is it from your viewpoint as a coach, and having lived the life you've lived so far, to switch from that how your body looks to how your body can perform? And the reason I ask that is because we've said this, and you know this from the mastermind and from working with me in business, you give people what they want on the front end, what they need on the back end. And normally a lot of people want weight loss. They want to look better. They want to have the confidence in the mirror. And that's amazing. That is something you should strive for, especially if it's a goal that you want. But what they need in the background is a performance goal, actually having confidence that their body can do what it said it's going to do when you go in and try and deadlift or squat. And as a result, that process makes your body composition change and you're happier with the results you're seeing in the mirror. How important is it that people, and I'll put it on women in particular without going too gender specific, that there's not just this focus on body composition, because men have it too, for sure. They want bigger arms, bigger chest, six pack, look better in a nightclub or in a bar at the weekend. But women have it equally, if not more so. Because it had such an impact on you, how important do you think it is to shift that perspective or mindset for those who are still stuck in this either weighing scale, how much does the scale weigh, or how much am I when I step on a scale, your relationship to how much weight you are, or I'm not happy with what I'm seeing in the mirror? Because sometimes focusing too much on that means that you lose the forest from the trees. That actually, if you shift your focus over here and focus on what your body can do, you'll get all these other things that you want. How does that look in your coaching practice based on your life experience?
It's absolutely everything. So, when I say I educate and empower through health, fitness and connection with self, there's a reason why I don't say through health and fitness. The connection with self is absolutely everything. It's the part that people, like you said, need, that don't realize that they need. You can have any type of goals. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to lose weight, or to, for men to have bigger arms or chest or whatever.
Yeah,
it's okay to have physical goals, but it has to go deeper than that. And this is where it really is so important to spend some time on your why. Why do you want to lose weight? So wanting to lose weight because you want to look better. Why do you want to look better? And as you start to dig deeper and ask that why, and just keep asking, and this really does need to be done with pen to paper, I believe. You dig deep enough to be like, I want to lose weight because I want to be healthy for my children. I want my children to see what a healthy, balanced lifestyle is. I want to be around for a long time. I want to be able to go out and have adventures at the weekend. I see people out hiking and I want to do that. I see people running races and I want to do that. And it becomes, as you start to layer it, it becomes so much more than, I want to be a size 10. And also, I think people rely a lot on motivation, and wanting to be a size 10 is not going to make you get out of the bed at 7 o'clock in the morning to get that run in that you want to do. Or it's not going to be enough to, plan ahead and maybe not just eat everything in sight at a party.
Unless there's a wedding, an event, a tangible date in the future where there's something you're very specifically working towards.
Your why needs to be strong. So your why is what is going to get you out of bed on that rainy morning. It's going to get you to stay focused on the habits that need to be done to reach your goal. The goal itself isn't enough. It has to be why you want the goal.
What was your why for joining the CrossFit gym?
That's a really good question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. My why was to become, initially with fitness in general, I'll just take this back a little bit to Kayla Itzenes. When I first started working out, it was because I wanted to look like her. I wanted a body like hers. That genuinely was it. When I started training in the CrossFit gym, it was because I wanted to learn more about this style of training. It was genuinely, the reason was to learn more. Once I was there once or twice, my why was, I want to get stronger. I want to be better. What those people are able to do, I want to be able to do that. And I think as well, apart from being around people who were stronger and fitter than me, I was around people like me that were trying really hard. And I was seeing how hard they were trying. And I was like, why are you not even trying, Kate? And that made me, it just lit up this kind of, if they can do it, I can do it.
Something I've used on the podcast quite frequently, and I'm actually going to flip it to the positive here. My mum used to always tell me that if you lie down with dogs, you get fleas. And it always made me think about the importance of your environment. And I was in a bodybuilding gym for years when I was competing in bodybuilding shows, and I developed really bad body dysmorphia from that period of my life, those 2 years of competing, because my reference point changed. I was looking at guys that were bigger, leaner, etc. So I'm very empathetic when I'm working with either male, female clients with that comparison syndrome, where they're constantly comparing up to people that are leaner or bigger or more shredded, etc., whatever the language is. But what I didn't know in 2015, 2016 was the importance of that environment, because I was in a bodybuilding gym, and not to knock the gym, I loved the gym I was training in, but I was around a lot of other bodybuilders and people that were striving towards competitions, and there was a lot of drugs in that world when it came to steroids and performance enhancers, and you're constantly questioning, oh, well, maybe if I do that, or if I use this, or I use more of that, and all these, that becomes your normal. And what I didn't know then was your environment and who's around you impacts the way you act and the way you think. When you put yourself into CrossFit and you put yourself into a CrossFit box, everybody in there is striving to get stronger, fitter, faster, get better times. And then that becomes the new normal. We get conditioned by that. And it's really important for those listening, knowing that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, to quote Jim Rohn, and whoever you're spending time with, your bar, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kate, that you saw people in there that were strong and that were moving weight and that were fit. And you thought, okay, I want to be like that. I want to move weight like that. I want to be able to hang from the bar longer. Is that what happened to you by default of just being in that different environment?
Absolutely. I was never around a combination of people like that. And it was, a real mix of people who were stronger and fitter. And like I said, people who were like me, and, people who were older than me. And it was lovely because it was so welcoming, and it was such a lovely community, especially. And we all went through COVID together, and we came out the other side, and we were socializing together. And I really made some amazing friends. Some of my best friends I made through that gym. One of my friends, Siobhan, I'll give her a little shout out. Siobhan was one of the people who believed in me before I believed in myself, and saw the potential in me and in my coaching and in my program. And, she was one of the first people that I tested it all on. And yeah, like it really, it was amazing to go out, to hang out with people that everyone's equal. It's like, oh, wait, everyone's, someone's not better than you just because they're stronger than you, which, it really challenged these limiting beliefs that were just there from childhood that I didn't know. It's like, just because someone can run faster than you doesn't make them a better person or any better than you. And it sounds crazy that even as a 30-year-old adult that was something I had to unlearn, but it was. And I think that's what I'm doing in life now, is just constantly unlearning. I question everything now. I'm like, why do you think that? It's crazy, the stuff that we just think.
Acquire. I gave you a copy of the new book before you came in there, rewriting your story, and there's a whole section in there based around that we spend our 20s particularly acquiring things and acquiring knowledge, information, and then your 30s and 40s are unlearning all the unsupportive narratives and beliefs that you've acquired along the way. And that's just one of them, that we have value systems that we attribute to other people. And because I spoke in Rewire Your Mindset, do I even care about tennis? Me and Dan had a conversation on Dan's Primal podcast talking about this, that I don't give a shit about tennis. So when someone does great in tennis, I'm like, all right, cool, great job, Nadal or Federer. Like, I don't care. Or if a friend wins a tournament, but I value things like podcasting and authoring because I put value into these things, and instantly then I compare against people who are doing quote unquote perceived better than me in that. And it's the same with body composition. You value losing weight or being fitter or being stronger. And your default sometimes, focus group of one here, can be, oh, that person's better than me because they're bigger or they're leaner or they're more shredded or they have more followers or they have a bigger podcast or whatever. Insert your value thing here. That's something that I've given value to. That's something that Kate has given value to. And they're things you have to unlearn, because otherwise you just fall into this default programming of comparing yourself against people with more money, who are leaner, who are more attractive, etc. When in reality, you have to figure out what's important to me. And that, which brings me on to the next question about that environment, because obviously CrossFit, not all CrossFit boxes are created equal. Some of them are incredible. Some of them not so welcoming. So do your due diligence. We're not saying this is go join a CrossFit box, you get the same experience as Kate. If you join a really good gym that has a community, a tribe, by all means, you'll get that. Did you find, as somebody that went from more of the kind of alcohol, unhealthier eating to an environment like CrossFit where people were focused on fitness and performance, that even your extracurricular activities started to change? You were going for hikes, you were going out for coffee. Did you find that happened?
Yeah, no, definitely was, group hikes, going out, and even just like me and Dave and the kids, just taking the kids out walking. My poor kids. Well, there was nothing else to do as well during COVID time as well. But like me and Dave and the kids, my poor kids were dragged up every mountain in Wicklow, and it was just very much all of my habits. Like everything just started to everything had started to change before I joined CrossFit. Anyway, the extracurricular things, my relationship with alcohol had very much changed due to my own need for it to change for my mental health and for my own health, and just I had quite an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. So that was something that I was moving towards. Like, I don't drink at all anymore, but I had kind of stages where I would give it up and then I would reintroduce it and try to have a better relationship with alcohol. And it's stemming from, I would have had serious issues with anxiety in my early 20s. I had chronic anxiety, daily panic attacks, worked through it, did a lot of work on myself, but still kept up that weekend binge drinking. And because I had kids young, we still had wine at the weekends and stuff because we weren't out as much. And it really always kind of kept me in a little bit of a cycle. So I had kind of moved away from these habits in the couple of years before I joined CrossFit. So then it was just a nice way to push forward. And I believe very much once you start to open yourself up to new ideas, the next step opens up in front of you. You don't need to know the whole journey. Even now, like this mad journey I'm on now, like sometimes people are like, are you okay? Why have you given up teaching? What are you doing? What are you going to do if? And I'm like, I don't know. I
figure it out.
I love it. Yeah, I figure it out as I go, and it's really, really exciting. I don't train CrossFit anymore. I do my own training now, and it's funny. I kind of did it in a backwards way to you. I'm actually the gym I'm training now. There will be a lot of bodybuilders in there. But it's funny when I think because I kind of entered the fitness industry straight into CrossFit, which most people kind of get bored of the traditional gym and go down kind of CrossFit high rocks route. I did it the opposite way. And then I kind of, because I was building my business and I was so tired, I was just, doing my 2 upper 2 lower sessions every week, and it was fine and was repetitive and I got it in. Whereas now I'm like, oh shit, Kate, you're not that fit anymore. So I'm getting back into a bit of running and, just kind of reintroducing it. But I think what I learned about fitness, even before I studied to be a personal trainer, was I learned a lot from CrossFit. I also did their level 1 coaching course and just learning about energy systems and getting fitter. And I don't agree with everything that CrossFit promotes either. I think there's a lot of way they do strength training that,
some of it's really fucking stupid.
It's really, really stupid.
I love CrossFit too, but some of it's really fucking stupid.
Yeah. It's like some of the, I think CrossFit is great for getting you fit, but like using the row or the ski or the bikes and things like that. But like throwing a barbell over your head 30 times as fast as you can really doesn't.
That's a great gravity. Yeah. Gravity's an undefeated winner in that. Like you put a max weight over and then try and max out on burpees. Like that bar is going to come straight down on your head. Yeah. Like you're asking for bad shit to happen.
My husband Dave was in the gym there, and he's since left CrossFit as well. But when he was still going, he was like, "Oh yeah, we had to do this workout. We had to do 100 bench press for time, and every time we dropped the bar, we had to do 10 burpees." And I was like, "Why? What is the actual fitness benefit of this workout? I don't understand." And he was like, "Oh, I didn't really think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all fitness modalities have that. Like, even just to pay context for timeline, when I left that bodybuilding gym, it was 2015. So we're talking a decade ago. I've since reintroduced myself and I can go into any environment now. That was more a reflection on what I needed to work through and my comparison issue, my body dysmorphia, etc. So it's not to knock on a bodybuilding gym. I love them. I love CrossFit. I do high rocks now. I do a whole host of things. I have massive training ADHD, so you'll see me jumping between things all the time because otherwise I get really bored.
I think that's really healthy, Brian, though. I really do. I think it's so healthy and I think anyone listening, if you're like, oh, well, I don't like fitness or I don't like the gym, there's so many different things you can do out there. There's, boxing, there's mixed martial arts, there's dance classes. I was talking on my podcast to a musical theatre dance coach, but not for dance for musical theatre, like fitness classes, and where they go in and it's show tunes and they're dancing and they're, and I'm like, there's something for everyone out there. And just because you decide that you do CrossFit or you're doing a bodybuilding show or a photo shoot or whatever, doesn't mean you have to do it forever. My friend Katrina who's done a photo shoot. She's very much a body composition coach. She's training for a half marathon and a high rocks at the minute because she wanted to change her training up. And she's still in incredible shape. You know what I mean? So I think it's just about finding things that you enjoy because you're going to do them more often.
Sorry, I didn't mean you were going to finish off a thought there, but I wanted to add on because that is beautifully said. Something that I've touched on people with business is always follow your curiosity, but I think it's equally effective for fitness. What are you curious about? Like with people that, one of the limiting languages, and you've probably seen this even more than I have, I just don't like fitness. I don't like the gym. I'm like, okay, but maybe you do a dance class, or maybe you go for a hike, or maybe you go for a cycle, or you swim. There's loads of different modalities and methodologies and different training styles that you can do that might be really helpful. I want to ask a question related specifically to you around habits then, Kate, because you've gone what could be argued as a 180 because of, and I didn't know you pre-fitness. You were into fitness by the time we met when we were working together. But back then, you were working as a teacher, unhealthy habits, drinking too much, etc. You have a completely different life now. You still have the same, you have a husband, you've got 3 kids, but so the base and the core is the same, but you as a person is completely evolved. What's a habit that you do now that keeps you on track from never going back? And I say that because it takes a while. To use myself as an example, that body dysmorphia version of me took 5 or 6 years where I was like, I could get pulled back here. Like I could get pulled back into this comparison syndrome because I'm not happy with how I'm looking. 10 years on, that's not an issue. I can walk into a bodybuilding gym, I can see lads in great shape and I'm like, amazing job, well done. Like, because I'm happy with how I look, I'm happy with how I am. So I don't have to worry about slipping anymore. But I had habits for years. One of them was, I went to a gym that was mostly performance-based. I didn't step, or I unfollowed pages that were all fitness model, bodybuilding pages because that was making me jump into comparison mode. I had habits and systems that stopped me slipping. What's something that you've adopted, either a habit or a system, that stops you falling back into, quote unquote, or lack of a better phrase, old Kate?
That's so easy for me, and it's an absolute non-negotiable for me now, and that is alcohol. Alcohol is a no-no for me. And the way I'm going on about alcohol in this podcast is where I was an alcoholic. I haven't suffered with alcoholism, but I would question if I hadn't stopped, would I eventually have had. But anyway, alcohol, because what I realized that it did for me is it disconnected me from my true self. There was a lot of stuff I had to work through, obviously, that I was just masking. I was getting on with my week, raising my kids, doing my job, drinking bottle or 2 of wine, every weekend. Bottle or 3 of wine every weekend, spread out throughout the weekend. And just feeling like shit, recovering, doing it again the following weekend, and just genuinely surviving. Now, I also know, having small kids, there is a little bit of surviving that goes on. But I think what happens to me when I stop drinking is that I can think clearly, I can feel clearly, and I'm connected to me. And when I'm connected to me, I think all of these things that is coming out of me now was always there. And that's why I was so anxious and why I was so lost, I suppose, when I was younger. And so for me, it's very much not drinking. And I haven't just, gave up 7 years ago and never drank again. I took break. I stopped drinking for about 2 years. And then I was like, I want to reintroduce alcohol and see if I got a different relationship with it. So I did. And my relationship with alcohol was different, which was great. I was able to go to a wedding, have a glass or two of red wine or whatever, enjoy it. We were on holidays last year, and me and my husband would have like a beer or two, you know, in the evening time, and it was lovely. But what I noticed when I was on holidays was that spark, that real joy in me. Like I have this, like I'm a little bit witchy sometimes. Like I have a really, really strong connection to nature, to the universe, to myself. My energy is very, very aligned when I'm in a good place. And what I noticed, even the small, low level of alcohol was dulling me. It was
dropping your frequency.
Dropping my frequency, and it just wasn't there. So although I had a lovely holiday, that spark was missing, and I was like, oh, it just has to go. Whereas now, and when I gave up alcohol before, I never said, and I've done like episodes of my podcast about this, I never said I would never drink again. Whereas now I'm like, I know I won't, because my why is so strong. Because I'm like, this magic that's coming out of me. And I believe we all have this magic. We all mask it quite a lot with stress, with eating, with drinking, with whatever. We all have this magic if we actually just connect with ourselves. And this is where the connection with self part of my coaching comes in as well. So that, yeah, non-negotiable. The really long-winded way of saying, for me, it's not drinking alcohol.
That's a great answer. I want to unpack a little bit of that, because that comes back to the connecting with self. I did a podcast recently with Amanda Kudo, who wrote the bestseller Breaking Up with Alcohol. And she spoke very similar about how it reduces your frequency. She's very got that woo-woo universe, witchy. Again, I'm as woo as there's very few men that are more woo than me, so I can't talk, so I connect instantly with that. But she spoke about a drop in her frequency and how that dulls the spark, dulls the drive, dulls the fire that's inside a lot of us. When you're working with clients, because it's not always going to be alcohol. For example, I don't drink an awful lot of alcohol. I love a drink, but alcohol doesn't have that massive dulling for me. I also don't have a particularly strong pull to alcohol, but there are other things that will dull that. Like I will overwork, and I have like a recovering workaholic. Like I have to constantly be mindful to not throw myself into, 40-hour days in a 24-hour window. Like, cause I can do that. It's something that pulls me, but that dulls me and numbs me. When people are struggling, what are some of the things that can numb them out that they don't always think of? Is it normally food? Is it the lack of movement? Is it the lack of priority with self in terms of balance?
Yeah. Do you know what it is that I see time and time again? And again, it can show in different ways, but it's giving, and because I work with a lot of women. I work with a lot of women in their 40s and 50s. It's giving themselves to other people. It's like any spare second they have that's not work and whatever else needs to be done, they throw themselves in to do more and more for other people. It's like, stop, slow down. Let's look at your week. Where are you fitting into this? And I think that's what it is. And I think that's what's dulling everyone. And that can manifest in different ways for different people, depending. And it can be work, and it can be alcohol, and it can be food, and it can be people pleasing, but it's always giving yourself to someone else, in my opinion.
I want to ask you, because I can't actually speak to this because I'm aware it's 2025. I'm a male. I can't have strong opinions on females around this because, and rightly so, I get attacked on the internet because I'm not a mom, I'm a dad. It's completely different based on historical and cultural ways that we see the world. But something that came up yesterday, I was on Anna Geary's Supercharged on RT last night, and we were speaking a little bit about this off air, because our next guest, Suzanne, who was a medical doctor, was speaking about this, that women, particularly in their 30s, 40s, 50s, are so used to putting everybody else first, their family, or if they're in work, everyone else goes before them and they don't take that time to themselves. When in reality, there's a reason when you're on a plane and the oxygen mask drops down, they say, secure your own oxygen mask first and then do your kids and then family members and elderly people, etc. But what I've noticed, and I'm hesitant to have a strong opinion, but you can speak directly to this, why women struggle so much with giving themselves permission to put themselves first, and then know that you can't give from an empty cup. If they look after themselves, they'll actually be a better mom, a better wife, a better work colleague, a better insert whatever the priority is here. Can you speak a little bit to that as to why you think they struggle? Because I work with female clients as well, and some of them I want to shake with love. and be like, you need to put yourself first. Like, you're an incredible human being. Stop putting everybody before you. Like, you can look after yourself and know that that's going to have a positive impact on everybody around you. Can you talk to us a little bit about that from your experience, either with clients yourself or what you've seen?
I think it's very much conditioning. I think it's a societal thing, and I think it probably comes all the way from like our history as women, you know, and that caregiving nature. Mm-hmm. Probably a little bit in our biology as well. But I think like for me, I don't struggle with putting myself first. But what I do struggle with, and I've gotten better at now, is the guilt that I attach to the fact that I will put myself first. I can be quite a selfish person, and I think that's what makes me a good business person as well. That I will put myself first. I'll make sure I get my things done, or I'll put, you know. And now I have a husband who's really, really helpful at home, and he works from home, and you know, our lifestyle makes that possible. I really do see, just from the hundreds of women that I've worked with, that a lot of women really do struggle to actually do that. And I think it comes down to habit and conditioning and society and guilt and lack of support sometimes as well. But I think, and again, I'm generalizing, there's different situations. There's some women who genuinely don't have the support. If I didn't have, like, you know, my parents, my sister, my husband, everyone to help out, like, I'm the definition of it takes a village to raise my kids. But and I am there a lot more now because I work from home and I am there, and you know, and it's brilliant. And we do, like, and I'm a big believer in quality time over quantity of time. When I was a teacher and I was pulling and dragging, I was giving out to them all the time and I wasn't happy and I was stressed. I was there, but whereas now, you know, the time we have together is much more quality time. But in relation to, some women don't have that support. And if you're raising kids and you don't have any support, it is, there, you know, you can't put yourself first, because you do have to. If I'm not putting my kids first, I have someone else there putting my kids first while I can't put them first. So you need to have a support system. And then there's another type of woman, another category of woman that I see quite a lot, where they won't let other people help. And that's fixable. That's easier to fix.
How do you fix that?
Okay. So what I do with clients is, you know, the Tim Ferriss book, 4-Hour Work Week. Yeah. So, you know, I've kind of rejigged his, you know, eliminate, automate, delegate. Mm-hmm. Right. So basically, so what I get clients to do is literally write out everything that they do on a regular week. And that can be quite shocking for them when they see, oh my God, like, look at this big long list, or these amount of pages. This is everything I fit into the week, you know, cooking the dinner, going to football training, work, like going to bringing your mother to the hospital appointment, whatever, you know, like it's literally a big long list. And I'm like, now you need to eliminate, delegate, automate. So rather than using this for business, we use this for our lives. And I'm like, I want you to be ruthless now. Get a red pen and I want you to scribble out anything on this list that you don't have to do and that you don't particularly enjoy. So they have to be ruthless. And this could be overtime that you feel like you have to do. This could be, you know, meeting an acquaintance for you know, that political like lunch that you have to have with someone just to kind of keep niceties, or, you know, it could be scrolling. It could be Netflix. You know, it could be, you have to be quite ruthless with yourself and with other people. Get rid of that, okay? Because we cannot make more time for ourselves. Like, and I hate that saying make more time. Like, there is no more, like, we have a finite amount of time. We have to create more space in our week. So that has to be done. Then we need to delegate. So when we delegate, this can look in different ways. This can be outsourcing. If you have the money to outsource, then, you know, getting a cleaner to help with the housework, hiring a childminder to help, to give you a few hours without your children to get whatever it is you need to get done for you. Or it can be, you know, asking the help of friends, family members, partners to do a little bit more and to share out the load. Or what I've learned, my children are perfectly capable of emptying the dishwasher, doing a bit of hoovering, you know what I mean? Sharing out the work a little bit in the week. Does all of this need to be done by you? And then what we look at is automating what has to be done. So like getting organized, putting it into a routine instead of being all over the shop. And you save yourself so much time. So, you know, obviously you have to go to work. You have to bring your kids to school. You have to, whatever has to be done. That, and what goes in there as well is your time, your training, your walking. All of that has to go into that automate time. And that's how we start. Because there's no point in trying to change habits. There's no point in trying to put anything in place until you've created the space for it.
I love that there's no more hours in the week. You just have to create time and create space for the hours that you're given.
And it all comes down to organization. It really does.
It does. And do you know what? Sometimes you need either permission or the awareness for someone to say it, because you probably had those conversations with clients, particularly busy moms, that you're like, look, you have to prioritize yourself. You have to set your boundaries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, oh, I never thought about it like that. They've just it's never entered their head that, yes, you can put yourself first and everything else will build around it, creating that space. I want to ask a question, and then I'm going to close off that loop before we move on to the final topic. The guilt around putting yourself first. I know this is in process at the moment for you. What's some of the language you use or some of the tools you use to minimize that guilt so that you're able to put yourself first, that you can be the best for your family, your loved ones, etc.?
I think it really comes down to curiosity, though. I will just, interesting, I'm feeling guilty now. And, and if that voice starts in my head where it's like, oh, you're being selfish. And then I'm like, why is selfish considered a bad thing? If you're selfish all of the time and you're never thinking of anyone else. But, I think as women, we will often feel guilty about things that men wouldn't think twice about. And I'm generalizing now.
I was about to say, so I will say it as a man, it's an unfair double standard for sure, because men don't judge other men and women generally don't judge men for putting themselves first, assuming they've put their family and they're providing and they're there and there's quality time, whereas women can be a little bit more judgmental or feel the guilt towards themselves for the same thing. And
I think also women judge themselves in other ways then, that they judge themselves if they choose to stay at home and raise their kids and they don't want to have a career, or they don't, that there's that side of it as well, where they feel guilty or that they're not doing anything for them. And I think it's really important to connect with yourself and what feels right for you, and to challenge yourself in the ways that make sense to you. But with the guilt, for me, do you know what I think about my kids, and I'm like, how they see me, and I know they, my 15-year-old son has said to me that he thinks, they're not his words, obviously, but he thinks it's pretty cool that I have my own business. I have one daughter, I have two sons, and I have one daughter, and I want her to be a little bit selfish. I want her to be able to stand on her own 2 feet. I don't want her to have to rely on another human being to find her way through life. I want her to be strong and I want her to be independent. And that's how I talk myself through it. So it's funny. I'm curious about the automatic guilt of selfishness, but it doesn't come from my mother. So it's something in us as women, and I think it might be biological. You probably know more because you've probably talked to experts about this in this topic.
A little bit, yeah. I've talked to a couple of evolutionary psychologists, people that study heavy on how we're evolutionary hardwired through our biology and how that's linked up to our thinking. So I'm a little bit more schooled on this particular topic based on what experts have told me. And there's definitely an element of biology in there that, as you mentioned there earlier and you said it beautifully, that caregiver element that's hardwired in a lot of females, so that putting themselves first doesn't come naturally. But a lot of things, when it comes to, we're living in 2025 now, we have an old mind for a new world, an old design for a new world. And just because it's your evolution and it's your biology doesn't mean it needs to stay there. We can change that now. Again, we haven't evolved massively over the last 10,000 years in terms of hardwiring. So when you think about that very logically, you're like, well, we're in a completely different world to we were 100 years ago, 200 years ago, don't mind 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. So that's why podcasts like this, conversations like this, listening to experts, reading the books, doing the courses, educating yourself is so important, because sometimes it's similar to your anxiety, which is actually going to be the final thing I'm going to finish up today's podcast on. Something that really helped my anxiety was knowing that I wasn't the only one. And that sounds so weird, but you know yourself when you're having a panic attack. I used to get anxiety attacks. You think you're the only one. You think there's something wrong with you, and you think that you're the only one, or that there's a little bit of shame around it, and just like, why do I feel like this?
Why am I so weak?
Why am I so weak? That was the language, identical language. When in reality, when you start to read, and I would read things from like Seneca and the Stoics from thousands of years ago, pre-Christ, pre-2000 years ago, and they're talking about anxiety and worry and stress, and you're like, oh shit. I was like, this is literally the way human beings are designed. And then you have your books like Dale Carnegie's How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, Rewire Your Anxious Brain by Catherine Pittman, that's talking about the neuroscience around anxiety, the how to stop worrying and start living. Those books are making you see that this is an actual problem for a lot of people. And sometimes that's the zero. That was my 0 to 1. That was the thing that helped me go, okay, there's a problem with my thinking. There's a problem with my brain. There's a problem with the way I'm seeing things. I've conditioned myself to do this automatically. I've learned to see things this way. And this is why I'm getting anxiety triggers. If I've learned that, I can unlearn it. And it's just re-educating yourself on it, that this is physiology. This is natural. How do I overcome it? Gratitude journaling. Gratitude, one of the biggest things I learned in the research for the new book was that you can't feel anxious and gratitude at the same time. Yeah. That was like one of the biggest things I've ever learned, that as soon as you start to gratitude, you're feeling anxiety and you start to make a list of things you're grateful for, your brain literally can't feel those two feelings simultaneously. So it'll shift you instantly out of an anxious state. That's a fucking game changer when you've struggled with anxiety for years. And I was like, oh my God, that's why gratitude journaling works. That's why being present and grateful for what you have works for anxiety. And it sounds like hippie woo until you apply it and go, well, actually, no, there's a cognitive neuroscientist that explains that you can't feel these two emotions simultaneously because your brain can't hold the space for them. And you can't physiologically feel what comes up with those two. They're like polarizing emotions, which I love, which brings me on to my final question. Anxiety. You mentioned it a few times during the podcast. Alcohol, I think, as you mentioned, is such a useful one, because if that's a trigger for either dulling that spark, which a brain tattoo I've used over the years is anxiety or ambition without action leads to anxiety. That's how I've always felt. I have a lot of ambition as a person, and when I don't take action with it, it leads to anxiety. With the anxiety and managing that anxious brain that you've had, because there's no way you'd be able to build the business you have, get the followers online, serve the people that you're working with, have the coaches who are serving more people underneath, the relationship with your family and your spouse, if you hadn't managed that anxiety, because it can be very overwhelming. What were some of the biggest things that helped you either rewire your anxious brain or get a manage or a control on it so that it wasn't impacting these areas of your life that were super important to you or extremely valuable when it comes to serving people in a meaningful way?
So this was a really long journey. So just for context, I'm 38 now. So I had my first panic attack at 21. So, you know, that kind of stage of life, you've just finished, I had just finished college and I had just got my first teaching job, and it was the summer between that. So, you know, I think I'd always been this diligent child who, you know, I was anxious, but functioning. Like I was always quite, you know, I always did well in school and I always did what I was supposed to and made sure I didn't get in trouble. Was a bit of a bold teenager, like a lot of us are, you know, but at the same time would have always been afraid of, you know, getting caught in the woods drinking or, always made sure I was home on time and, you know, always eager to please. And, you know, I think I was always really hyper vigilant without realizing it. So I was stressed probably from the moment I started school, age 4, up until my first panic attack at 21. When I had panic attack, it was literally like my whole soul left my body, just completely detached from my body. At the time, I'd never heard of it. You know, you hear someone say, oh, I've had a panic attack. You know, when they said like they're feeling stressed about something. I genuinely thought I was going to pass out or drop dead, literally. And then obviously that brought on the tightness in the chest and the not being able to breathe properly. And that it was just so it was terrifying. That I remember it was in Dingle that summer and I was with my family and we were walking around Dingle just strolling around. But we had been, myself and my sister and my mum, we'd been like in the bar drinking the night before. My dad had been there, so he had gone to bed or whatever. But we stayed up and we were drinking wine. We had a great time. So we had a bit of a hangover and we were walking around. And so the first time it hit, it was with a hangover. But I think it was the build-up of all of this stress. And so then it started to kind of, what's the word when something's rolling down the hill and it's building momentum?
Snowball
effect. Yeah, compound effect. And I started having panic attacks more regularly. So it started off very much going to the doctor and being like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I'm dying. You know, there's something wrong with my heart, my lungs or whatever. So, you know, did all the physical tests. I had the heart monitor on, everything. The doctor was like, there's nothing there. So eventually he diagnosed me with what he called at the time panic disorder. And when I tell you, I have never felt such relief, because this probably went on.
Because it was labelled.
Yeah, this was a good year before it was diagnosed, because I was like, there's a name for it. like you said, other people have it. I'm not alone. And this was huge. Now, it by no means solved my problems, but I remember I was going, that would have actually been October 2008, because I was going to New York with Dave. We were going to New York, and it was a trip, and I was really excited about it. I always wanted to go to New York. I was really unwell with anxiety at the time, but the doctor was like, "You'll be grand. Go enjoy it. You'll be fine." I literally was crippled with anxiety. I couldn't enjoy it. I still haven't been back. I need to go back to New York and redo it properly. I'll do it with my kids and Dave someday, but it was awful. I was out of body. It was constant panic attacks. It was awful. So when I went back, I was in bits, and I said to the doctor, I was like, "I can't do this anymore. This was awful." And he was like, "Okay, look, we need to get you on some medication." So I did for a time. I went on Lexapro, which is a serotonin enhancing drug, and he put me on a course of it for 6 weeks. He was like, "You're going to be staying on this a little bit longer." So it was just to bring the serotonin levels up in my brain. And he's like, "And I want you to start doing some cognitive behavioral therapy." And when I tell you, Brian, that changed my life. Cognitive behavioral therapy. If anyone is struggling, that is the route to go. I'm not pro medication. I'm not anti-medication.
But as a bridge, it can be very useful as a bridge.
It depends on your
in your situation.
Absolutely. And I think it's very dangerous when people are extremely anti-drugs.
Yeah. And the other extreme.
And extremely pro-drugs. And I know friends who have doctors who just get medicated every time they feel any way off. And that's not the answer. But the way it was handled for me was perfect. And I spent a couple of years up until I was pregnant with my son in 2009 on Lexapro, but I did cognitive behavioral therapy for those 2 years as well. And a year and a half probably was how long it was. But it taught me to face that fear. And like we spoke about with the career change, what's the worst that could happen? She was like, "Okay, my therapist was like, what's the worst that can happen?" And once I released the fear of the panic attack, she was like, "I want you to go to a supermarket or go to a shopping centre and when you feel the panic attack coming on, be like, give it your best shot, bring it on." And it did change that for me. Now, obviously, my serotonin levels were coming up, so I was receptive to these ideas. She got me to read the book. God, I can't even remember what it's called, but it was a book in relation to understanding what panic attacks were, what was physically happening in my body. Yeah. And once I understood that I couldn't die from it, and, that I was surrendering to the embarrassment of having a panic attack in public, they started to go away. And it was at that time in my life then where fitness started to come in as well. And personal development and reading, and I've read a lot of personal development books, and it's funny because everything I've read, everything I've listened to, it all brings it back to the same thing, which is being in the present moment, connecting with yourself in just loads of different modalities and explained in different ways. And yeah, it's literally just ever since that moment, since that first panic attack, everything has just been teaching me and bringing me to where I am today.
And we'll wrap on this. It's failure is feedback. It's quote unquote perceived failure. It's seeds of quote unquote failure, planting trees for future success. All of that happened. And the reason I wanted to ask it was for people that are listening who struggle, because anxiety is a massive spectrum from normal human experience of daily anxiety, worrying about something that may or may not happen, to panic attacks, anxiety disorders, to where you're actually rendered motionless and people can't act at all. It's a massive spectrum. But I think the takeaway and what I'm hearing you say is, one, it's okay to ask for help, which I couldn't be a bigger believer in. I think therapy, even giving yourself permission to know you're not alone, and read the books and get the professional help if you need it. Use a bridge if you need that bridge, i.e. if it needs to be medication, but also don't over rely on it. I think it's very much danger in the dose. And ultimately that what happens for you puts you on your path. One of the reasons you're able to serve your clients so well and empathize with them, not only as a busy mum, but also anyone that struggles with their anxiety or mental health, as you've struggled with it yourself. So it gives you a completely different perspective and empathy when you're working with them. So I love that we've wrapped on that. Kate, for people listening, there's obviously the podcast, which I'm going to link up. There's Instagram, which is blowing up at the minute. Is there anywhere in particular you'd like to send people to reach out or follow based off the back of today?
No, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I'm on them all. Kate Hamilton Health. You'll find me. Yeah, if you search me, you'll find me, and I'll be there. Yeah, probably in a supermarket showing you what to eat.
Yes, there's a lot of supermarket videos on that Instagram page. I always know it's when I see a supermarket thing coming up, whether Kate's in the photo, I'm like, that's one of Kate's videos for sure. So I'll link those in the descriptions for everybody listening. And you can check out the Instagram page, check out the podcast. Kate, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me.